Hello everyone, welcome to Viti Pathshala. In this class, we would be studying about the 8th class, 3rd chapter, term 3rd, and the chapter 1 and the 2. So here you have only 2 chapters to be studied. Hello everyone, welcome to Viti Pathshala. In this class, so we would be starting the class shortly, and the 8th class would be over after this chapter. So the 2 chapters, so after that your 8th class would be covered. Now what you would be going to study in this chapter? So after studying this chapter, you will be able to learn about the growth and the development of the towns in the ancient and the medieval period, to analyze the nature and the feature of the urbanization under the British period, to learn about the emergence of the new urban centers such as the cantonments, hill stations, and the port cities. So these are the things you would be getting to know in this chapter, and we would be going to study. Now let's start with the chapter. First, the introduction. The evolution of the town's urban settlements has occurred in the different ways in different stages. So evolution of the towns, it has occurred in different ways in different stages. The town flourished since the prehistoric times in the India. Towns in India can be classified into the ancient, medieval and the modern towns. So हम 3 भागों में इनको divide कर सकते हैं. We can divide in the 3 types. These are the your ancient, then medieval and the modern. First, the ancient. In the ancient times, towns emerged in and the around the residential places of the kings. तो कहाँ होते थे? जहाँ राजा रहता था, राजा का पैलेस था, उस राजा के पैलेस के रेजिडेंशियल प्लेसेस ऑफ द किंग्स उसके आसपास, एंड इट्स लोकेशन इजीली accessible to the sea and river from the trade, river for the trade. Most of them developed as the administrative, religious, cultural centers. Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Varanasi, Allahabad, Madurai are well-known ancient towns. So these are the ancient times, these are the well-known ancient towns. Next comes is the medieval towns. The medieval times, most of the towns developed as headquarters of the principalities and the kingdoms. So that are the medieval towns. They functioned either fort city or the port city. They functioned either they were the fort city or the port city. Now important among them are the Delhi, Hyderabad, the Jaipur, Lucknow, Agra, Nagpur. These are the important ones. Next comes is the modern towns. With the arrival of the Europeans brought about the new changes in the development of the towns. They first developed some coastal towns such as the Surat, where the first factory of the French and the English was established. Daman, Goa, Pondicherry. The British, after they consolidated their power in the India, developed 3 main cities. Now these cities are the Mumbai, Chennai and the Calcutta or Kolkata. Now as the administrative headquarter and trading centers, with the extension domination, they developed new towns depending on its location, now purpose and the resources. The newly developed towns was known differentially as the hill town, industrial town, court towns, railway station towns, cantonments and the administrative towns. What are the unique features of the urbanization under the British? The first comes is the deindustrialization. Now what is this? In the beginning of the 18th century, the policies of the British proved harmful to the process of urbanization. Later, the economic policies followed by the British, they led to the rapid transformation of the India's economy into the colonial economy and developing of the cities it started. With the help of one-way free trade, predominance of the British Indian manufacturing industries were destroyed. The effect of the wholesale destruction of the Indian manufacturing industries. It led to the ruin of the millions of the artisans. They does not have the job, they have to adopt the agriculture. There was a sudden collapse of the urban handicrafts industry, which had for centuries made India's name in the market of the entire civilized world. Towns and the cities, long framed from their specialized products, gazed the continually shrinking markets. As a result, old populous manufacturing towns such as the Dhaka, Murshidabad, Surat, Lucknow, they lost their previous importance. Because during the time of the Mughal and the earlier, they were the most important towns, or they were the artisans and the craftsmen used to live. Murshidabad, Surat, Lucknow, and the previous importance. The entire industrial structure, it crashed down under the stiff competition of the imported goods. जो बाहर से जो सामान आ रहा था वो सस्ता सामान आता था, यहाँ पर जो है उसको डंप किया जाता था. रॉ मटेरियल वो सेंट टू द ब्रिटेन. The traditional industrial base of the Indian cities, made by the indigenous handicraft production, was destroyed by the Industrial Revolution. The high import duties, other restrictions it imposed on the import of the Indian goods to the Britain and to the Europe led to the decline of the Indian industries. Thus, India became the agricultural colony of the Britain. The next comes is the de-urbanization. This is the de-industrialization which we studied. Next thing is that the de-industrialization. The transformation of the Indian economy into a colonial one, a market for the manufacturers and the source for the supply of the raw material to her industries, hit hard the industrial and the commercial base of number of towns. The gradual erosion of the king's power, it led to the demise of the towns associated with their rule. Agra was once the imperial city. In the first quarter of the 19th century was surrounded by the extensive ruins all around. Agra, the city which was established by the Akbar. Now the native rulers lost their kingdom to the British by the means of the various policies of the colonial power. Another factor which contributed to the decline of the urban centers of the pre-British period was the introduction of the network of the railroads in India since 1853. What network of the railroads since 1853? Dalhousie's contribution to the railways is immense. The introduction of the railways resulted in the diversion of the trade routes, and every railway station became a point of exporting the raw material. The railway enabled the British manufacturers to reach every nook and corner of the country and uprooted the traditional industries in villages of the country. Next comes is the growth of the new urban centers. The British developed new centers of the trade. These were the Calcutta, Madras, Bombay on the eastern and the western coastal areas. Madras 1639, Bombay 1661, Calcutta 1690, they were established. Cities with the British largely created and fortified them. Fortified मतलब कि किलाबंदी कर दी. All those were earlier fishing and weaving villages. Here they built their homes, shops and churches as well as their commercial and the administrative headquarters. From the mid of the 18th century, there was a new phase of the change. As a result, as the British gradually acquired the political control after the Battle of the Plassey, 1757, and the trade of the East India Company was expanded. Now, in the later 18th century, Calcutta, Bombay, Madras rose into the prominence as the presidency cities. For administrative purpose, colonial India was divided into the three presidencies under the British rule. A new trend of the urbanization began in the later half of the 19th century. As a result, the steam navigation, construction of the railways, canals, harbors, growth of the factory industries, coal mining, tea plantation, banking, shipping and insurance. So changes in the network of the trade was reflected in the development of the urban centers. So earlier, which were the small towns, now they have turned into the large cities or the large towns, urban towns. Now first comes is the port cities. The British arrived in the India for the trading. Madras, Calcutta, Bombay became the important ports. They played important role in the trade. These cities became the prominent commercial areas. With the tall European style buildings, the English East India Company built its factories and they fortified them for the protection of their settlement. The Fort St. George in the Madras and then the Fort St. William in the Calcutta were the best examples of these. Now you have the colonial and urban developments. The port cities, you have cantonment, hill stations, railway towns. So capital of the provinces developed around the ports. Now capital of the inland provinces along the trunk routes and the strategic places. A social space developed by the colonial community for the health and the recreation. Developed on the plains for the railway towns were the developed on the plains for the quick movement of the troops and the transport of the goods. Now you can see that this is a picture of the Fort St. William in the Calcutta. The next comes is the cantonment towns. The British occupied the territory, Indian territory and political power by their military force. So they needed the strong military camps and established the cantonments. The cantonments were thus an entirely new thing of the urban centers. Army people began to live in these places and gradually they were grown up a city. That is the example Kanpur, Lahore. The next comes is the hill stations. Hill stations were the distinctive features of the colonial urban development. Although hill stations were not unknown prior to their holding of the British in the India. They were few and had a small population and were often visited for the specific purpose. For example, Srinagar was a Mughal recreational center. Kedarnath, Badrinath were the Hindu religious centers. The British, coming from a cool temperature climate, found the Indian summer season inhospitable. So the cool climate of the Indian hills was seen as the protective and the advantages for the Britain or the British officers. It protected the European from the hot weather and the epidemics. So they built up the alternative capitals in the capital areas like the Darjeeling was the alternative capital of the Calcutta. Dehradun was the alternative capital of the Delhi. Now hill station became the strategic places for the billeting the troops, guarding the frontiers and launching the campaigns. Hill stations were developed both in the north and the south India, दोनों जगह. Example Shimla, Nainital, Darjeeling, Otach, Kamad, the Kodi Canal, Shimla was founded during the Gorkha War, that is the 1814 to the 1816. Darjeeling was wrested from the ruler of the Sikkim in 1835. These hills places were also developed on as the sanatoriums. Sanatoriums are the places for the soldiers for the rest and the recovery for the illness. And the introduction of the railways made the hill station more accessible to the people. Next comes is the railway towns. Railway towns were also a type of the urban settlement which were established in the 1853 after the introduction of the railway by the British. By the nature of the railway transport, all the towns were located on the plains. Next comes is the creation of the municipalities and the corporation. The development of the local government in the British India may be traced in the three different phases. The first phase is from 1688 to the 1882. The municipal government in India had been into existence since the 1688 with the formation of the Madras Municipal Council, the Madras Municipal Corporation with the mayor. Sir Joseph Child, one of the directors of the East India Company, was responsible for the formation of the corporation. The Charter Act of the 1793 established municipal administration in the three presidencies town. According to the provisions of the Act of the 1850, municipalities were formed in the northwestern frontier province Awadh and the Bombay. Lord Mayo's famous resolution of the 1870 intended to afford the opportunities for the development of the self-government. Now, second phase is from the 1880 to the 1920 Ripon resolution on the local self-government. Ripon is known as the father of the local self-government, was a landmark in the history of the local self-government. So Ripon is rightly regarded as the father of the local self-government in India, and his resolution as the Magna Carta for the local government. Now the third phase here comes the Government of the India Act of the 1919. It introduced the diarchy in the provinces. The Government of the India Act of the year 1935 introduced the provincial autonomy. With the attainment of the independence in 1947, India had the unique opportunity of the making and molding the local government to meet the needs of the free nations. Next comes is the administration of the presidency towns. Towards the close of the 18th century, a parliamentary statute authorized the Governor General to appoint the justices of the peace in these towns. After various trials, a system of the government was evolved for the three presidencies towns, which had been the essential feature, like a large corporation with elected members, a strong independent authority with adequate safeguard for checking the account, and the statutory provision for the performance of the essential duties such as the sanitization, water supply, collection of the revenue, etc. These were the essential duties. Next comes is the origin and the growth of the Madras. The beginning of the city of the Madras goes back to the earliest stages of the British commercial enterprise in the India. The English East India Company was started in the 1600 by a charter granted by the Queen Elizabeth. 12 years later, they established a factory at the Surat on the western coast. Subsequently, the search for the textile brought the British merchants to have the port on the east coast. Presently, the Fort St. George is the power center of the Tamil Nadu state government, extended from the 172 square kilometer and 66 square miles. Now next comes is the English after some efforts accused the privileges of the building a factory at the Masulipatam. It was well protected from the monsoon winds, but then the Masulipatam was in the throes of the famine. In spite of the every assurance of the protection, English trade did not thrive at the place. Now then the English traders looked for the new site. Francis Day, the member of the Masulipatam Council and the chief of the Armagao factory, made a voyage exploration in the 1637 in a view to choose the site for the new settlement. At last he was given the offer to choose the Madras Patanam. Francis Day inspected the place and found favorable to set up a factory. The official grant for the land was given by the Damral Venkapati Nayak, the deputy of the Raja Chandragiri, 12 km west of the Tirupati. Dharmala gave the British a piece of the land between the Combe River and the Egmore. In 1639, the deed was signed between the English East India Company and the English East India Company and the Francis they, by the interpreter, that is the Barry Thimpa and the superior Andrew Cogan. By this, the Francis they Andrew Cogan, the chief of the Muslipatanam factory, was granted the permission to establish the factory come the trading port and a fort at the Madras Patnam in the 1639. Now this fortified settlement came to be known as the Fort St. George settlement. It is otherwise referred to as the White Town. While the nearby villages inhabited by the local population was called as the Black Town, collectively in the White Town and the Black Town were called the Madras. So दो प्रकार के टाउन्स होते थे, एक ब्लैक टाउन, एक होता था आपका व्हाइट टाउन. ये दोनों मिला के क्या बनाते थे? मद्रास. So we are not concerned with the Madras Patnam, we are not concerned with the making of the Chennai. So we are leaving these topics. Now directly come to the Bombay. Bombay was initially, they were the 7 islands. It was under the control of the Portuguese from the 1534 onwards. The Portuguese king gave it as a dowry to the Charles II of the king when he married to the former sister of the 1661. Now king leased to the English East India Company. The city of the Bombay began to grow when the East India Company started using the Bombay as the main port in the Western India, and the 1687 the English East India Company transferred the headquarter from the Surat to the Bombay. Now next comes is the Calcutta. In 1690 the English merchants founded a settlement at the Sultanate, because the Chennai was not under the Britishers na. And the thing I was leaving because it was not a part of that. So I did the Madras because their first settlement was at the Madras. Then they went to the Calcutta. Then they have taken the Bombay on the lease. So I would complete at the last. There is no problem conducting, but the thing that will not appear in the class na. So now in the 1698 they secured the Jamidari right for the Sultanate Calcutta and the Govindpur. The company established Fort William at the Calcutta. Calcutta became the presidency with a governor and the council managed its affairs. So before conclusion, let me complete a small topic, that is the Chennai which was left. So the Madras Patnam. Dharmula Venkapati gave the English the grant of the Madras Patnam. He was under the control of the Venkatapati Rayelu, the Raja of the Chandragiri. Venkatapati was succeeded by the Srirang Yelai in the 1640. He issued a new grant to the English in the 1645 called the Srirangapatnam. Venkapati desired that the name Chennapatnam should be given to the new fort and the settlement of the English and after his father Chennappa Nayak. But the English preferred to call the two united towns as the Madras Patnam. The next comes is the making of the Chennai. Chennai was one of the groups of the villages set amidst the palm fringed paddy fields until the two English East India Company merchants visited there. Raja Mahal in the Chandragiri Palace, where the Sir Francis Day of the East India Company was granted the land in the 1639 in order to set up the factory, which later came to be known as the Madras. The first building to seen in the entering the fort through the sea gate is the seat of the government of the Tamil Nadu. Now these impressive buildings were built between the 1694 and the 1732 and are said to be among the oldest surviving British constructions. The first factory was completed on the St. George Day, 23rd April 1614, and named after the Fort St. George. Day and the Cagon were the jointly responsible for the construction of the Fort St. George. Now, this was the East India Company's principal settlement until the 1774. The Madras Presidency was an administrative subdivision which was referred to as the Madras Province. The Madras Presidency during the British regime covered a vast expose and the southern part of the India that compasses of the modern day Tamil Nadu, the Lakshadweep Island, the northern Kerala, Rayalaseema, coastal Andhra districts of the Karnataka, and the various districts of the southern Odisha. Now, Dalhousie Square in the Calcutta and a Fort St. George in the Madras were close to the central commercial area and had the massive building which were the British variants of the Roman style. After the independence in 1947, the Madras Presidency, it became the state of the Madras, and the other regions that were a part of the erstwhile presidencies were constituted into the separate states of the Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, and the Mysore under the States Reorganization Act of the 1956. Later on, the 1969, the state of the Madras was rechristened as the Tamil Nadu. On the 17th July 1996, Madras was officially renamed as the Chennai. Now, this was all what we have to do. So the most important that you will find in your textbooks are these three. That is, the Madras was the first center, then the Bombay and the Calcutta and the Bombay. These three are the important. The British Empire. Conclusion. The British Empire gradually consolidated and established an elaborate spatial structure of the administration with an imperial capital, provincial capital, and the district headquarters. The new rulers brought new officials because when I have done the other books now, there the only Calcutta, Bombay, and the Madras and mentioned. So I didn't know about that. The name of the Madras has been changed to the Chennai. So it was a useful thing. Now, provincial capitals and the district headquarters. The new rulers brought the new officials, new institutions, and the new structures to these towns with a kacheri, cantonment, police stations, jail, treasury, public garden, post office, school, dispensary, and above all a municipal committee. Thus, in the course of the time, administrative headquarters emerged as the most important towns and the cities of the country. For example, by the beginning of the 20th century, the Calcutta, Bombay, and the Madras had become the leading administrative, commercial, and the industrial cities of the India. Now, these cities became the Europe in the central commercial area with the building of the European style suburban railways, tram car, city buses gave the colonial cities a new look and a status. In the Tamil Nadu SCRT board has to publish these books, all India books. They have to do that. They must publish them on Amazon or the Flipkart, that any person who wanted to study or who wanted to buy can buy from anywhere in the India. So it will also generate the revenue for the education board. So one thing that they can do, it would be a huge revenue. They can sell a combination of 6 to 12. They can put the price for that. Now they are not delivering these books to the other parts of the country now. This would be one of the they generate a huge revenue out of these selling these books. The next comes is the status of the woman in the India through the ages. You can also contact your nearest DM, or you can also contact to the person who is in charge of the education, who is the secretary of the education. It is in the hand of the secretary of the education. So the next unit is the second unit, that is the status of the woman in the India through the ages. So this is also an important chapter which we are going to study. Now, what would be our learning objectives? Our learning objectives would be to acquaint ourselves with the position of the woman in the ancient society, the deterioration in the status of the woman in the medieval period, the major social evils prevalent in the Indian society, the role of the reformers and the evils in the role of the reformers in the social evil eradication, women emancipation through the education, social legislations and the empowerment. Now, in the today's newspaper, you will find that a news is there that the UGC had said to the colleges to hold the final semester exam by the end of this September. So the UGC has asked the colleges to hold the final semester exam by the end of this September. So UGC had said either to conduct them online, offline, or the hybrid, or the mixture of the both, or the blended mode. So till this September they want that the UGC have given the direction to conduct the university final year exams. So that is the scenario. So the things will automatically become it will become cool. Now it comes to the introduction. Now generally the human society is constantly changing with the addition, assimilations and the omissions from within and the outside. Women constitute the half of the population. This is imperative to have a historical understanding of the status of the woman through the ages. The position of the woman was not uniform in all periods, differed with the regional variations. In the ancient India, particularly early Vedic period, women enjoyed equal rights, but with the passage of the time their status in the society found deteriorated as a result of the frequent foreign invasions. Now they were subjected to the subjugation and the subordination. The new social practices, customs and the systems which crept into the society in turn put the limitations and the restrictions on the liberty of the woman. During the British Raj, many socio-religious reformers like the Raja Ram Mohan Roy, the Dayanand Saraswati, the Keshav Chandra Sen, the Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar, Pandita Ramabai, Dr. Mathulakshmi Amayar, Jyoti Rao Phule, Periyar, EVR, Dr. Dharmabal were the prominent leaders who fought for the upliftment of the woman. Raja Ram Mohan Roy efforts led to the abolition of the Sati in the 1829. Vidyasagar's crusade for the improvement in the condition of the widows led to the passing of the Widow Remarriage Act of the 1856. The reformers rightly realized that the female education as an emancipating agent in the eradicating the social evils. Yes, sir. Sen and the Roy are different, it seems. Okay. So there are these some names which are confusing in the history. You will find that the reformers realized the female education emancipating agent to eradicate the social evils. So there is a saying that if you educate a woman, then you are educating a family. So instead of the educating a boy, you must give the education to a girl. So they started the girls' school in the various parts of the country, which brought the significant changes in the lives of the women. And I have found that the girls are the more serious towards their studies rather than the boys, if we consider. So the results of these years, in past 10 years, if we see the results of the past 10 years, the women or the girls have performed very well in the exams. The woman played an important part in the Indian freedom struggle. Until independence, there was no radical changes in the status of the woman. In independent India, last few decades have witnessed the last few decades have witnessed the all-round development of the women. Women are now making their presence felt in the every walk of the life. Yesterday I was watching the news, and I come across a news that a girl from the Madhya Pradesh, a small little girl, she was in the 10th class and she has secured 98% marks in the 10th class. And what is scenario? She used to daily cycle 24 kilometer to go to the school. Now this means that 24 kilometer is a huge distance. So this 24 kilometer, if you double it, the 24, it is 48 kilometer per day. A girl is cycling, a 10th class girl. It would be 15 years girl. So this is the fact. No such type of the, if you get such type of the instances, so note down them, because you can quote them in the exam. So during the lockdown, there was a scenario that a girl carried her father on the cycle to the village. So then when the cycling association came to know, they invited her for the trials also. So such is the talent in India. Now the government, the condition in the states is very poor. So I don't know about the major cities or the other states, but in Delhi itself the condition is not good. The education is not good. And the government is not focusing on education. And if you will not educate the children, then the society will not develop. It will never develop. Now see the difference between the Indian society and the Pakistan society. So there is a huge difference. Now the position of the woman, we would be comparing from the ancient period to the modern period. In the ancient Indus civilization of the India, evidences show the worship of the mother goddess. Hence the adoration for the mother is evident during that period. Now during the Rig Vedic period, it is believed that the position of the wife was honored and woman's position was acknowledged, especially in the performance of the religious ceremonies. Now during the later age witnessed a transitional development in the status of the woman, restricting her role in the social life except in the performance of the religious sacrifices. Her social and the political freedom was restricted. Sati became popular during the later Vedic period. Now in the early Vedic period, it was the condition of the woman was very good, but later on it deteriorated. बाद में खराब होती है, starting में सही रहती है. Sati became the popular during the later Vedic period, where the widows either choose for themselves or were forced to jump. They were forced to jump into the pyre of their husband, and the patriarchal system became the rigid. Women were denied to study the Vedic scriptures. Now there is a movie a movie in the Hindi, Thappad. The concept is very good, but it is also promoting the divorce. The concept is good, but it is promoting the divorces. So I do not support the divorce, but I highly say that the thing that is the violence is also not the way. So now the next comes is the medieval period. The position of the women in this society further deteriorated during the medieval period, and they suffered from the many social evils such as the sati, child marriages, the female infanticide, parda system, and the slavery. Normally the monogamy was in the practice, but among the rich the polygamy was prevalent. Sati was practiced in particularly among the royal and the upper strata of the society. The woman remarriage was a rare case. The Devdasi system was in practice in some parts of the India. Among the Rajput of the Rajasthan, the Jor was practiced. The Parda system became the popular of the rest of the result of the Muslims invasion, and the condition of the widow became the miserable during the medieval period. Now, but we don't ignore the fact that the Mughal ruler Akbar attempted to abolish the Sati. Now, in fact, the very little attention was paid to the female education. Now, education is the one thing that if you provide education, then the every evil would be done away. Now, Johar refers to the practice of the collective voluntary immolation by the wives and the daughters of the defeated Rajput warriors in order to avoid the capture and the dishonor. Now, in spite of the general determination, we can found this some exceptional Rajia Sultana, the Queen Durgavati, Chand Bibi, Nur Jahan, Jahanara, Jijabai, Mirabai. These were the exceptions. The system of the education in the medieval time was still at a rudimentary stage. Now, women education was not completely ignored. Now, though no regular separate schools seem to have existed, female education was informal. Girls usually had their lessons from their parents in their childhood. The rich appointed the tutors to teach the daughters at the home. The daughters of the Rajput chiefs and the Jamidars studied the literature and the philosophy. Then comes the British period. For the centuries, women in India had been subordinated to the men and the socially oppressed. The major effect of the national awakening in the 19th century was seen in the field of the social reform. The enlightened persons increasingly revolted against the rigid social evil and the outdated customs. Numerous individuals, reform societies, and the religious organization worked hard to spread the education among women and to encourage the widow remarriage, to improve the living conditions of the widows, to prevent the marriage of the young children, to bring the women out of the Parda system, to enforce the monogamy, and to enable the middle class women to take up the profession of the public employment. In the beginning of the 19th century, female literacy was extremely low when compared to the male literacy. The Christian missionaries were the first to set up the Calcutta Female Juvenile Society. The Bethune School was founded in the 1849 by the J.E.D. Bethune, who was the president of the Council of the Education in the Calcutta. The Charles Wood Dispatch on the Education in the 1854, it laid a great stress on the need for the female education. Indian Education Commission Hunter of the 1882 recommended to start the primary schools for the girls and the teacher training institution and suggested the special scholarship and the prizes for the girls. In 1880, the Indian women began to enter the universities. They were also trained to become the doctors and the teachers. They began to write the books and the magazines. In 1914, the Women Medical Service did a lot of the trainings of the midwives. Now, in the 1890s, the D.K. Karve established a number of the female schools in the Pune. Professor D.K. Karve, Pandit Ramabai made a sincere effort to emancipate the women through the education was really remarkable. The Indian Women University was started by the Professor D.K. Karve in the 1916. It was an outstanding institution imparting the education to women. In the same year, the Lady Haring Medical College was started in the Delhi. It is running today also, the medical college, one of the major colleges for the medical education. Now next comes is the major social evils. The female infanticide, female feticide. Now, female infanticide was another inhuman practice affecting the 19th century Indian society. It was particularly vogue in the Rajputana, Punjab, and the northwestern province. It was mainly avoided too as the economic burden. Factors such as the family pride, the fear of the not finding a suitable match for the girl child were some of the major reasons responsible for this practice. Therefore, immediately after the birth, the female infants were being killed. The company administration in the India took steps to ban this practice by passing the Bengal Regulatory Act of the Act 21 of the 1795, Regulating Act of the 1802, and the Female Infanticide Act of the 1870. So there is a movie related to these things. Recently, it is in Netflix, that the movie name is Bulbul. Now it is on the women empowerment, or it is showing that the evils that were prevailing during the British time. So during the royal families, so a little girl, a small girl, 5 years girl, was married to a 20-year-old person. So his whole life goes like that. So at the last, she became a witch, and she used to kill the people and to take the revenge. So it is on the woman empowerment. The female feticide. The female feticide is an inhuman practice which cuts across the caste, creed, class, and the regional boundaries. Whether it is the female infanticide or the female feticide, the prime motive remain the same. In order to ban the female feticide and the sex determination, the central government passed the various acts. Next comes the child marriage. The practice of the child marriage was another social disgrace for the women. The child marriage was prevalent among the tribes. In 1846, the minimum marriageable age for a girl was the minimum 10 years. The Native Marriage Act was passed in the 1872. Now it fixed the minimum marriageable age of the girls as the 14 and the boys as the 18. In 1930, the Central Legislative Assembly passed the Rai Sahab Har Bilas Sarda's Child Marriage Bill, fixing the minimum age for the boys is the 18 and the girl is the 14. And it was later amended, and it was recent the amendment, and recent it is the 18 and the 21. At present it is the not recent. At present it is 18 and 21 respectively. Now Akbar prohibited the child marriage and made it the obligatory for the parents to obtain the approval of both the bride and the bridegroom before the marriage. He prescribed the 14 years as the age of the consent for the girls and the 16 years the age for the boys. Now next is the Sati. So the Sati we would be discussing more. Sati was a social evil that prevails in the Indian society, especially Rajputs. The feudal societies of that time encouraged the Satis, which meant the self-immolation of the widows on the funeral pyre of her husband. Earlier it was a voluntary act, but later the relative forced the widows to sit on the funeral pyre. The Italian traveler Niccolo Conti, who visited the Vijayanagar about the year AD 1420, noted that the inhabitants of the region marry as many wives as they please, and who are burnt with their dead husbands. In early years of the 19th century, Sati was in practice in the various parts of the Bengal, Western India, and the Southern India. Now, for example, if I imagine at that time, for example, if a person has one person have married to 5. So if he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wives, and in case he died, so in case one person died due to the disease, and then these 5 have to do the Sati. Such a bad practice was that. And there are some scholars also who have justified the Sati. कुछ scholars ने Sati को justify भी किया है. The thing is that the widow remarriage was not allowed. Now first thing is that if you wanted to end the Sati, you have to allow the widow remarriage. Why widow remarriage has to be allowed. Now it has to be allowed because when the husband has gone, now there is no one to look after him. So the family or the other relatives or the other persons, the neighbors, everyone finds the ways to treat the woman and to take the benefit of the woman. So that is the scenario. That's why the some authors have justified the sati, that it was the good thing at that time. Now for women, if the society takes the advantage of the woman after the death of the husband, then it is a bad thing. Then the sati can be done. So there are the different narratives. Some are the critics, some are the they are positively saying that this is a good practice. Now Jagan Mohan Roy, the brother of the Ram Mohan Roy, passed away and his wife was burnt along with him. So her bhabhi, so he only realized when her bhabhi was burnt. So he said to her parents and the other not to do so, and he has advised her bhabhi also not to do so. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy was moved to the extreme at the sight of it and took an oath that he would have the cruel practice abolished by law. Now he has earlier gone to the Varanasi and there he have taken the education. So he is a scholar of the many books. So he was a great orator and he was a great personality, Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Now we can say that he was a great social reformer. Now he carried on the continuous agitation through the press and the platform for the abolition of the sati. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy published his tracts in the 1818 and the 1820, making the point that the right of the sati was not the enjoyed by the Shastras. The material was used by the Serampur missionaries to shatter the generally accepted view that the sati was integral part of the Hindu religion. Orthodox Hindu opinion against the abolition of was advocated by the Radha Krishna Dev and the Bhavani Charan Banerjee. Now when Lord William Bentinck took up the question of the sati, he found that the abolition has been recommended by the judges of the criminal courts. He passed the regulation 15, 16, 17 of the December 4 of the 1829, declaring the practice of the sati or the burning of the alive woman Hindu illegal and punishable by the criminal courts. Similar legislative measures were enacted soon after in the Bombay and the Madras also. Next comes is the Devdasi system. The word Devdasi or the Sanskrit Devdasi or the Devar Adiyal in the Tamil means the servant of the god. Dancing girls dedicated to the service of the god in the temple. Devdasi system was a social evil. There was also the tradition of the dedicating one's daughter to the temple. In addition to the taking care of the temple, they learned and the practice of the Bharatnatyam and other classical Indian arts. The traditional enjoyed a high status in the social status. Later on, they were ill-treated and humiliated. The Devdasis lost their dignity, a sense of pride and the self-respect and the honor. Dr. Muthu Lakshmi, the Amyar, who was the first woman doctor in the India, dedicated herself for the cause of the abolishing the cruel practice of the Devdasi system from the Tamil Nadu. Appreciating her role in the agitation against the Devdasi system, she was nominated to the Tamil Nadu Legislative Council in the 1929. Periyar E.V. Ramaswamy was instrumental in the passing the Devdasi abolition bill. Dr. Muthulakshmi Amyar proposed the bill to the Madras Legislative Council in 1930. Moovalur Ramadharan was yet another woman who fought for the emancipation of the Devdasi. With the continuous moral support rendered by the Rajaji, the Periyar and the Thiruvika, she raised the slogans against the cruel practice. As a result of the government passed the Devdasi Abolition Act. The Madras Devdasi Act was a law that was enacted on the 9th October 1947. The law was passed in the Madras Presidency and gave the Devdasis the legal right to marry and made it illegal to dedicate girls to India temple. Now, what was the role of the social reformers? From the second half of the 19th century, a number of the social reform movements sought to promote the upliftment of the women and them, educating them, raising their marriageable age, taking care of the widows, as well as to remove the rigidity of the caste and to raise the suppressed classes to a status of the equality. The reformers who led the movement were the forerunners of the modern India. These are the Raja Ram Mohan Roy. There were some enlightened Indians who supported the British attempt to reform the oppressive social order in the India. The first was the abolition of the Sati of the law on the humanitarian ground. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was the pioneer of the Indian social reform movement, was a casteless crusader of the Sati. After having seen this practice in the case of his own sister-in-law, he started his campaign against this in the human evil practice. Influenced by the ruthless attack of the movement led by the Ram Mohan Roy, the British government decided this act as the culpable homicide. Raja Ram Mohan Roy is the most remembered for the helping the Lord William Bentinck to declare the practice of the Sati a punishable offense in the 1829. He also protested against the child marriage and the female feticide. He favored the remarriage of the woman and female education and the woman right to the property. Thus, the evil practice of the Sati on any scale was wiped out. The next comes is the Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar. Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar carried on the movement for the female education, widow remarriage and the abolition of the polygamy in the Bengal. He submitted the petition to this effect to the Indian Legislative Council and to the passing of the Hindu Widow Remarriage Act of the 1856. His son, the Narayan Chandra, set an example to the others by marrying a widow of her choice. Now, to promote the female education, Vidyasagar founded the several girls' schools in the district of the Nadia, Midanpur, the Hooghly and the Burdwan of the Bengal. Now, Kandukuri Veerasingalam Pantulu was the earliest champion of the South India of the women emancipation. He published a journal, Vivek Vardhani. He opened the first girls' schools in the 1874 and he made the widow remarriage and the female education the key point of his program for the social reform. M.G. Ranade, B.M. Malabari. In the Bombay Presidency, M.G. Ranade and B.M. Malabari, they carried on the movement for the upliftment of the women. In 1869, the Ranade joined the Widow Remarriage Association and he encouraged the widow remarriage and the female education and opposed the child marriage. In 1887, he started the National Social Conference, which became a preeminent institution for the social reform. In 1884, B.L. Malabari, a journalist, started a movement for the abolition of the child marriage. He published the pamphlets on the subjects of the appealed the government to take the actions. Now next comes is the Gopal Krishna Gokhale or Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Started the Servants of the India Society. He was the guru of the Mahatma Gandhi, which took these social measures as the primary education, female education and the depressed classes upliftment. The spread of the female education led to the several other social reforms of the great consequences, such as the abolition of the Parda, which further led to the participation of the women in the freedom struggle. Now next comes is the Periyar EVR. Periyar EVR, one of the greatest social reformer of the Tamil Nadu. He advocated the women education, women remarriage, intercaste remarriage and the opposed the child marriages. Next comes is the women reformers. Most of the reforms movement like the Brahmo Samaj, Pratna Samaj, Arya Samaj were led to the male reformers who set the limit of the freedom and development of the woman. Women reformers like the Pandita Ramabai, Rukmabai, Tarabai Sindhe tried to extend further. In 1889, the Pandit Ramabai opened the Sharda Sadan. It opened the Sharda Sadan, home of the learning for the Hindu widow in the Bombay. It is later shifted to the Pune. Now her greatest legacy was her effort, the first in the India to educate the women. Theosophical Society was established at the Chennai, and Dr. Annie Besant, who came from the Europe and they joined it. Now it also developed the General Social Reform Program. Dr. S. Dharmalu was another reformer who was very much influenced by the ideas of the Periyar. She showed the great interest in the implementing the widow remarriage and the women education. Among the Muvalur Ramadham Amiyar raised the voice against the Devdasi system, along the Dr. Muthu Lakshmi Amiyar. In her memory, the government of the Tamil Nadu has instituted the Moluvar, the Ramamirtha Amal Ninavu marriage assistance scheme, a social welfare to provide the financial assistance to poor women, as the poverty was the root cause for all these evils. Thus, the women reformers also contributed a lot for the winning their rights. Now, leading women realized the need for the forming their own association in the order to safeguard their interest. As a result, three major national or women organizations: Women India Association, National Council for the Women of the in the India, the All India Women Conference was founded. Now, women in the freedom movement. So, the women in the freedom movement in the early anti-colonial struggle, women played the major role in the various capacities. Volunteer of the Shiv Ganga fought violently against the British, and the revolt restored her rule in the Shiv Ganga. Begum Hazrat Mahal, Rani Lakshmi Bai of the Jhansi, led an armed revolt in the 1857 against the British. In the freedom struggle, thousands of the women came out of their homes, boycotted the foreign goods were the boycotted, marched in the processions, defied the laws, received the lathi charge, and codified the jails. Their participation in the struggle added a new impact of the mass character. Now, impact of the reform movement: significant advances were made in the field of the emancipation of the women. It created a national awakening among the masses. It created a feel of the sacrifice, service, and the rationalism. The practice of the Sati and the infanticide were made illegal. It permitted the widow remarriage. Now, women in the independent India. Women in the India now participate in the activities such as education, politics, medical, culture, service sector, science, and the technology. The Constitution of the India guarantees the equal opportunity and the equal pay for the equal work. The national policy for the empowerment of the women was passed under the national policy of the education under the 1986. New program was launched, the Mahila Samakhya. Its main focus was to empower the women. Reservation of the 33% of the women engaged in improvement in the social political status of the women. The National Commission for the Women was set up in the January 1992. Its main function is to review the women related legislation and intervene in the specific individual complaints of the atrocities and the denials. So there is a table given below. This is an important table. So Bengal Regulation 21, that is the female infanticide, was declared illegal. The regulation number 20, regulation number 17, regular 17, practice of the sati was declared illegal. Hindu Widow Remarriage Act, it was permitted the woman remarriage. The Native Marriage Act of the 1872, child marriage was prohibited. The Sharda Act of the 1930, which we follow today also, the age of the marriage was raised for the boys and the girls. The Devdasi Abolition Act, it abolished the Devdasi system. So it was of the Devdasi of the 1947, it abolished the Devdasi system. So this was all in this chapter. So your 8th class is completed, so your whole history part has been completed. So they have not covered the your national freedom struggle, they have not covered, they have covered it till the 1857. So the other things they have covered in detail, except of the the Indian national movement, they have not discussed in the chapter. So next what we would be doing would be there are 11 chapters in the 9th class. So the 10 chapters are important. So we would be doing 5 tomorrow and 5 the other day. So on Wednesday and Thursday we would be doing 5 chapter each. So then on the Friday and the Saturday again we would be doing the 5 and the 5 chapters of the your 10th class. This is your 9th class. It is in 10th, sir. Okay. Again in the 9th and the 10th we will do. Yes, we will do again in the 9th and 10th. So tomorrow and the other day we would be doing again these things. So this was all, and so I would be able to, so tomorrow is your 8th, 9th, then 10th and the 11th. Then your Sunday, leaving the Sunday 13 and the 14, I would be doing your 11th class. And 15 and the 16 I would be doing the. So I would not be taking the leaving the world history. I would be leaving the part of the postmodern history. I would be leaving these topics in the history. Wherever if they appear, I would be leaving these chapters, and you also make a note of these chapters. उनको note कर लेना, एक पेज पर note कर लेना, और बाद में मेरे को लास्ट में बता देना मेंस के टाइम. After the prelims we would be doing these chapters. First world history we would be doing after prelims only, because it is not required, because we have to do NCRTs also after this. No, it is not. Postmodern is not important. Postmodern is not important. One or two question comes, and that is silly questions. Nowadays they are not asking from this, they are directly asking from the 12th political science. History is not important, the political science part is important, and that is not much important. That you do in the Lakshmikant is enough for that. So we would be leaving the postmodern. So that was all. Now I would be taking your PSIR class. We would be starting the parliament today. So a big chapter but important chapter. We would be starting the parliament, and it is important. The parliament chapter is very important for prelims. So I would be giving you a link right after this class, and we would be again joining at the 10:30. So 10:30 there would be your class for the mains, and we would be doing the parliament, because it is an important topic for your this prelims also. So maximum question are asked from there. सबसे ज़्यादा क्वेश्चन आते हैं आपके पार्लियामेंट से. So thank you all of you for your time. Bye. Take care and do revise these things. History पढ़ लो, छठी से उठा के 8वीं तक पढ़ लो. So on 16th, by 16th, on 16th, not by 16th or by 15th. If I have to take the class on Sunday, I would be taking, but I would be completing your history by 15th. So there should be no doubt सो कुछ भी नहीं बचना चाहिए, अपना पढ़ के क्लियर करो, हिस्ट्री को साइड में रखो, एंड देन यू शुड बी कॉन्फिडेंट एनी क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम एनी वेयर इट कम, यू मस्ट बी एबल टू आंसर, दैट शुड बी योर कॉन्फिडेंस.